draft season is here. We're about 30 hours away, and the drama, I can't even say it's building because there really is just not much drama right now at this point with this draft.
It's it's an interesting class. It's one that's kind of meat and potatoes, a little
Yes.
bit more steak than sizzle. It feels like, that we've known for a while that Cam Ward kind of looks like the odds-on favorite to be the guy for the Titans. I thought a little bit earlier on this winter maybe that'd be kind of an open question. Would they maybe go Abdul Carter? But nope, looks like it's going to be Cam Ward up there. And I think that there's expectations as to how the top three will shake out. Although it seems like, maybe the Giants and the Browns will be listening to offers, but I'm just not so sure that anyone ends up making that move for these guys the same way that we've saw in recent years, because I don't think that really happens for non-quarterbacks necessarily. So it should be interesting. It feels like the Jags are kind of like the linchpin of like what are they going to do? I think it's kind of all over the map as far as what their plans are at five. But all told, it's maybe like from the fantasy angle, maybe not the most exciting draft in the world other than the running backs. But I think we reach this point every year, the day before the draft, where it's like, let's get this thing going.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're someone who bets this thing, whether you actually seriously bet this, which that's not something I would ever really recommend to do with something that's just so volatile as this. But if you like to have a little fun and sprinkle, some pizza money, some beer money on a couple of draft picks and selections and positions and all that kind of stuff, the odds are all over the place. So I did a draft show by myself last week, like Friday, and all of the odds that I had written down are long gone, all over the place, some better, some worse. I mean, we've seen movement since we started creating a rundown last night for this show today. I mean, we've gone like Mason Graham is a perfect example, someone who like the entire lead up to this draft has been like locked in, minus like juiced to be a top five pick. Now today on Wednesday at 1 o'clock, you can find him at like plus 220 on some books. It is nuts to watch how these odds have just fluctuated all over the place.
I know it, man, and like the first offensive lineman off the board that's like fluctuated. It seems like it's settled into to Will Campbell kind of being back to the odds-on favorite there. But yeah, Graham, that really dovetails with the thought about the Jaguars and what they're going to do. I think that just speaks to the uncertainty. It's a first year GM, and I just kind of wonder
How
if
old is
if
he?
like
Is he out of high school? He looks 12.
he's not older enough than either of us to have that job. It's outrageous, but. It wouldn't surprise me if like the NFL draft pundits that are very, very plugged in are kind of getting a little bit stonewalled by the Jaguars as they kind of want to like keep this thing as in-house as possible for their first draft as the new brass there in Jacksonville. And I think that kind of lends itself to that uncertainty where Mason Graham, who had been kind of rubber stamped to go to the Jags at five, now not so certain.
Yeah, so we'll get back to the Jags in a minute. Let's start right off at the top here. Cam Ward seems like he's the odds-on consensus. It's like minus 20,000 at this point. I mean, I think Cam Ward is an interesting prospect, but I agree with everybody who's saying that if he was in last year's class and came out a year early, he'd be like the eighth or ninth quarterback taken last year. He is just there's some issues with Cam Ward where I'm not sure the ceiling's there, and Tennessee might be setting themselves up for disappointment with this pick.
It's true, and it's a situation where like the rest of the roster is bad, and we've seen there's a reason why a lot of the time like these number one overall picks at quarterback don't end up panning out, and it's less to do with who they are and more to do with the team around them, and the clock immediately starts ticking on this Titans team as to whether they can kind of start to look like a real NFL team. Last year they really just simply did not for the bulk of the season. And it's tricky. So you bring in a guy like Ward, who, like you said, just doesn't have that same world-beating talent that we saw from last year between Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels. We saw Bo Nix have the tremendous rookie season. I think that, yeah, it'd be kind of like a coin flip as to whether Cam Ward would have gone ahead of Michael Penix if the draft or if he was in the draft last year. So yeah, it's a different caliber of guy that you're getting with the first overall pick than you were, say, a year ago. No question.
So the one little like nugget or like ripple of like any sort of drama with this draft that we've gotten so far has come this week, Tuesday morning. Peter Schrager, who's now with ESPN, goes on Get Up, and he says that both the Cleveland Browns and the New York Giants have been taking calls when it comes to their early first round picks. Cleveland is picking number 2. The Giants are picking number 3. Who are people trying to trade up for? If this is the case, if this is true, and someone is trying to move up here for, is it for Travis Hunter at number 2? Is it for someone to go try to get that pass rusher and Abdul Carter, who everyone thinks is the blue chip prospect of this draft if he's healthy? Or could it be that maybe we're in full Shadur propaganda season and that someone is trying to get up there allegedly to take Shadur Sanders?
Well, I would buy it for Travis Hunter. I think he is the big prize here. He's the best or in like the most highly valued non-quarterback in this class, probably the best player overall in this class. So with the expectation that the Titans go quarterback, that means that the Browns have their pick of the litter. That they're able to go ahead and either take the best player available in Travis Hunter or shop that pick for a sort of king's ransom. It obviously wouldn't have to be the same type of freight that Carolina paid a couple of years ago to get Bryce Young from that Chicago pick or anything like that. But I think that it's such like a difficult dynamic to really sort through because I'm just not sure that anyone wants to go ahead and pay that type of price for a non-quarterback. So I think that there's smoke, and I think if you're the Browns or the Giants, you'd be smart to kind of let this out there where, yeah, people are interested in moving up. Maybe that makes someone like the Jaguars or the Raiders a little bit more interested in potentially moving, maybe even the Panthers, who I just alluded to, because it feels like in some sense they have their quarterback situation figured out. We wouldn't have said that a year ago, but Bryce Young obviously played well down the stretch last year. Maybe they can get a difference maker in Travis Hunter if they were to move up to 2. It just cost a lot to get there. So ultimately, I do expect both the Browns and the Giants to stand pat. Although, this does add some intrigue. This is not something that was really being discussed until the Schrager report when it comes to either of these teams shopping that pick. I think everyone had kind of expected them to stay there, and with Hunter to go second and Abdul Carter to go third.
So I pulled up the DraftKings odds board here. You guys can see on the screen at the moment. Travis Hunter still minus 1,100 to go number 2. And then we have Abdul Carter minus 800 here to go number 3. But John, do you have any interest in a Shadur exact pick here? And like a 2 or a 3 is like a lottery ticket. You can get him at plus 2,200 if you think he goes second overall. If someone truly is that horny for a quarterback to get up there and take him, or you can even take him at plus 750 here at number 3. Let me pull up the top 5 odds for Shadur. He's at plus 500 to go in the top 5 if you think someone moves up that way. Any of these bigger tickets with Sanders, do any of these like catch your eye here heading into tomorrow night?
I feel like Sanders might end up being the ultimate rug pull. Because I think we have kind of expected that he's going to be the second quarterback off the board. He's going to be a first rounder, no question about it. Probably a top 10 if nothing else. But I wonder if like the market has cooled or it was always cool and we just didn't or we weren't privy to that information. And I could see Sanders kind of being that guy that is sitting in that green room for a while on Thursday night, waiting for his name to get called. The way that this quarterback class works and the teams who are interested or potentially interested, I think it's just a not ideal year for Sanders. Like, I don't think that there's going to be that many teams interested. I think you could look at the Saints at 9 and then on down to say like the Steelers in the early 20s. I think is kind of where the range where the range goes. So now I'm just simply not so sure that Sanders is a top 20 pick or even a first rounder. That could end up being the stunner if you could find a two-way market on Sanders to be a first rounder and take the no. I'd be interested to see what those odds look like.
Yeah, definitely. And the rumor is that Mike Tomlin loves Shadur Sanders, and we don't know what Pittsburgh's doing at quarterback right now. If the season started today, it would be Mason Rudolph, I believe, under center, which is just that's not good for anybody except for the other teams in the AFC North, because Rudolph should not be starting in this league, in my opinion, anyway. But if we look at Sanders' odds here when it comes to which team will take him, Pittsburgh now is the odds-on favorite at plus 180 on DraftKings. We got Cleveland right behind them at plus 215. Some people seem to think that if Cleveland does go with Travis Hunter at number 2, that they might try to double dip the Colorado products there and try to get Sanders towards the end of the first round, or maybe even early on in the second with their number 2 pick. But these odds have moved a lot, John, in the last 3-4 days. I believe I saw a 4-1 out there with Pittsburgh last week, at the end of last week. This is now plus 180 here. Is this one, maybe, do you bite the bullet with a Steelers ticket? I don't really know how to bet Shedeur at the moment. I almost want to sprinkle on the Giants just because the Giants could do something stupid and crazy, because that's just what they seem to do with Joe Shane. But I don't know. Do you like the Pittsburgh angle here with Shedeur? What do you think of that?
Right. It just speaks to the volatility of these NFL draft markets where, yeah, it was 4-1 and just days ago. And now you're not even getting 2-1 for Sanders. And it's something that it is very presumptive to say that or to make an exact call on a team picking 21st overall. Steelers don't really strike me as a team, and historically they haven't been the team that trades up for a quarterback. You wonder if they're a little bit nervous about spending that pick on a quarterback, because it sort of ends up being that no man's land. Usually the best quarterbacks in a given draft are going to go in the top 15, and everything else is kind of a project. And that's why, we kind of knew at the time that the Kenny Pickett selection wasn't going to work out, but it's like there's a reason why he's still available there. Like you're sort of doing this bet against nobody else when you're making a pick on a quarterback at that stage of the draft. So even still, I do agree with the sense that the Steelers are the odds-on favorite. At this point, I would have just wish I had a time machine to get it at 4-1 as opposed to today.
Yeah, so I pulled up FanDuel here for the position of the Steelers' first drafted player. Defensive lineman or edge is still the top selection here on that odds board. Quarterback right behind it. So you got D-line at plus 155, quarterback at plus 170. I guess since we're talking about quarterbacks, we might as well talk about Jackson Dart right now and get that out of the way too. Every year there's a quarterback, right, that comes out of nowhere and is all of a sudden not just a first round pick, but maybe even in the top 10, where we saw last year with Michael Penix kind of go from a guy we thought was going to go in the second round all the way to being taken, I believe, 8th overall by the Falcons. Of course, you got the Anthony Richardson thing from a couple of years ago. That's working out great in Indianapolis, as he's now competing with Daniel Jones for snaps here coming into that season. But what do you think about Jackson Dart? Do you think he's a first round pick? And as I kind of move around this odds board here on DraftKings, what I found was very interesting. Jackson Dart is minus 250 to be a first round pick. And then if you go to the position total page, quarterback selected in round 1 over 2.5, just minus 135 here. So there is some value on the board if you think Jackson Dart goes in the first round, where you can get a better number at over 2.5 quarterbacks to be taken in that first round Thursday night.
So I think that the Saints are very much in play for Dart. I think Dart fits the bill as maybe like the toolsier of the non Cam Ward quarterbacks. I think he's got some mobility. He's got impressive amount of toughness for kind of like this blonde kid who started out at Cali or at USC. I saw him front and center at Ole Miss against Georgia a couple of times. Always played hard, always played well, especially this past year. I think people maybe ding him a little bit too much for that Florida game performance. That was like the trap game of the century last year. I think that Dart kind of like does have those intriguing traits to his game that I think is going to be a little bit more interesting to NFL front offices than even potentially what Shedeur Sanders brings to the table. I'm worried about the arm strength when it comes to Sanders, and that's not something that you can fix. Dart does have that, and he does have mobility. Sanders famously took way too many sacks at Colorado, less so the case with Dart. He's got the escapability there, so I think that Dart is. I'd be interested in him as the second quarterback off the board, and I think the Saints at 9 would make some sense, especially with the murky future when it comes to Derek Carr. And we got a long kind of audition last year out of our guy Spencer Rattler, and I think that we know that the Saints can probably move on from that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And the Derek Carr injury does throw kind of a wrench into these plans too. With that shoulder injury, I was just looking at that Saints quarterback depth chart. with if Carr's healthy, he's the number one guy. But then Spencer Rattler, as you mentioned, Jake Hayner's there. The ghost of Ben DiNucci is the fourth quarterback on that roster. So the Saints definitely have some work to do. And I believe you can find actually a pretty nice number when it comes to Jackson Dart to be the second quarterback taken in this draft here on Thursday night. But let's move on. Let's kind of pick things up and let's go back to the Jaguars. And this is kind of my big question that I'm wondering here as we head into Thursday night is when does this draft start to get like crazy and weird? Who throws things off the rails? We've talked about the chalk at the top. I want to like personally, I'm hoping that the Giants do something kind of out of left field and go a little nuts here with their pick at number 3 because I really want Abdul Carter to fall to New England at 4 as my personal hope. Will Campbell, I think, would be a fine pick. I'm not as upset as some other people have already worked themselves up to here in Boston that if they take a offensive tackle with little arms, they have just blown this draft completely. I want to say the Giants are going to do something weird, but where do you think this draft kind of gets a little off the rails Thursday night?
I think it is the Jags at 5. I think with the Patriots, they're going to kind of let it come to them. I think Vrabel can be the kind of guy who imbues the common sense element into things and the team building sense into it. And ultimately, the Patriots will make it a boring but probably a good pick at 4, whomever the best player available that they view. I think is going to be their guy there at 4. So the Jaguars, again, it just goes in so many different directions. Right, as you can see right now on the screen, Ashton Genty now the favorite to and with like a decent bit of juice behind it, minus
Yeah.
160 to be the pick at number 5. But I do think that there's an interesting like other detail to factor in here. If the Raiders are believed to be in the market for Ashton Genty, the Bears, I think, would be potentially willing to move up to number 5 and trade with Jacksonville for that pick so they can get out ahead of Vegas and make Ashton Genty their bell cow running back. Because I really think that offense, most of its pieces are spoken for, but running back certainly not. So I think that the Bears are very much in the market. And I think that I'd be surprised if the Bears make their pick at 10. I think that they very well could either move up to 5 or if Genty comes off the board before they're able to grab him, move back a little bit and be in the market for someone like an Omarion Hampton or Trevion Henderson.
Yeah, do you think we're at the point where Genty's definitely going in the top 6 picks here, or would you be willing to throw a little sprinkle on like a lottery ticket that he falls past 6 and ends up going to the later part of the top 10 here? Because I do think that's interesting. You got a plus 280 now on FanDuel for him to go 7 or later in this draft.
Yeah, it's
And
hard to see him.
He's still a running back.
He is, but I think people might be taking the wrong lessons away from last year with the way that Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs impacted their respective teams in free agency. But I still think that Genty seems to be kind of in a draft that's kind of light on blue chip talent. Genty, dollars to donuts is probably like the number 2, number 3 guy on a lot of teams' big boards, and I think that ultimately we see him go in the first 6 picks.
So anything else in the top 10 here that interests you when it comes to this market? I know we got a couple of pass rushers from Georgia that you're very familiar with, could potentially be top 10 picks, whether it's Mykel Williams at minus 140, Jalen Walker, who now it seems like he's definitely going in the top 10, could go as high as number 4 to the Patriots, but minus 900 for him. What interests you when it comes to the top 10 market?
I think it's Mykel Williams at minus 140, and it's not to completely like discount the possibility of Jalen Walker going in the top 10. Like the odds seem to stipulate, and all the rumors seem to kind of back it up, where Jalen Walker is very high on a lot of teams' boards. But I think Mykel Williams is more of a conventional. Like if you were building a pass rusher, he would end up looking a lot more like Mykel Williams than he does Jalen Walker. I think that there's some kind of untapped potential there when it comes to Mykel Williams. Whereas Walker, we're going to need him to kind of be bigger than the sum of his traits because he's got the long arms, he's got the pass rush moves, but a little bit light, a little bit short to be a conventional like edge rusher that you're just counting on racking up the sacks. Whereas Mykel Williams, I think, a little bit more of what you'd expect from that type of position. So with the odds being what they are, and a couple of teams being in the market for an edge rusher, I think that minus 140 is actually a pretty nice price to be paying for a guy like Mykel Williams.
I want to throw a little bit of a long shot at you. One that I do like here, and I am considering betting myself, Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan, to be a top 10 pick, plus 475. This was over 500 a night ago. It was down as low as I think like 250 last week. We see cornerbacks now, especially if they have the ability to be a shutdown game changer type of guy, going in the top 10 the past few years, whether it's Pat Surtain, J.C. Horn, Derek Stingley. I know Travis Hunter is technically a cornerback listed first here, but I think Will Johnson, even with that injury, and you look at these teams here in the top 10, I mean, Miami could use a corner. The Saints could use a corner. I guess even the Bears could use a corner here, or Miami's actually a 13. Miami could move up, but they're Oakland or Vegas rather. There are plenty of teams that do need corners here. What do you think about Will Johnson?
I I think if Will Johnson was able to be drafted last year, then I think a top 10 would be a really solid bet on him. But the way that this season went, the lack of verified metrics and measurables from the workouts, I think the teams will kind of sit back a little bit. And when he did play, wasn't quite the same guy last year that he was in 2023. So I like the player. I still believe in him, and I think that you'd be foolish to only weigh what he did this past season as to what he's going to be at the next level. I think that it can end up looking like what it did in 2023, but I do wonder if like the market ends up cooling enough on him to where we see him more in the middle of the first round. I think Miami, like you mentioned, would kind of be a sweet spot for him actually.
So let's talk about the rest of these first round picks. And this is where I think you can definitely make some money here in this draft, which is when you get towards the like in the 20s into the early 30s here at the end of the first round. You don't really know what these teams are going to do. These are true lottery tickets here at this point when it comes to betting wise. I do think there's some interesting angles to approach here at the end of the first round, whether it's the running back market. We know that this is a extremely deep running back class. It's very top heavy too, with guys like Genty and Hampton. Someone that I'm interested in is Travion Henderson from Ohio State, that sledgehammer that they've had in that backfield the past couple of years. We get the report this morning from Jeremy Fowler that the Chiefs are doing their homework on Henderson. Kansas City picking 31. We've seen them take running backs in the first round in years past with CEH, Edwards-Helaire a couple of years ago. Travion Henderson, minus 115 to be a first round pick, John. This was around plus 170, plus 165 a couple of days ago. But I'm interested in this angle here because if you go once again to position totals on DraftKings, running backs selected in the first round over 2.5, plus 170 here. Different ways to bet this. Do you think Travion Henderson sneaks into the first round, a guy that a lot of people are comparing to a Jahmyr Gibbs at the moment?
It's definitely in the realm of possibility, and like I don't think it's open and shut necessarily that he isn't the second running back off the board ahead of Amari and Hampton. Now it's expected that Hampton ends up being the next guy up after Genty, but I don't think it's completely off the table that Henderson, with what he brings to the table, really complete skill set, bursty, has awesome pass catching ability out of the backfield. Also, like you hear it every year around this time, like when you're separating out the running backs. How does he do in blitz pickup? Trevion Henderson is like well known for being great at that as well. So I think that all helps his case. And I think the key part is you mentioned that there's another team late in the first round that could be interested. And I think coming into this week, I really felt like only like the Bears or the Broncos were like the two locks to take a running back. But now that with the potential that the Chiefs are going to be interested, that really adds like a nice little safety net there for this bet if you're looking at Trevion Henderson to go in the first round and also looking at over 2.5 running backs being taken in the first.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an interesting angle to potentially play on Thursday night. Henderson to go before Hampton, or at least be the second running back taken after Genty, plus 210 on FanDuel right now, where Hampton's at minus 420. Hampton, we got an over-under of like 20.5 for his draft position. The wide receiver market, we haven't talked a ton about because these guys are they're kind of wild cards this year. I am not a Ted McMillan guy whatsoever. I don't like the profile. I'm not a Drake London guy. I think he's literally a Drake London clone at this point. So I'm not interested in him. Some of the other guys, though, I love Emeka Egbuka. I think he's going to be a stud in the NFL. I mean, you're talking about a guy here that was in the wide receiver room with guys like Olave, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jeremiah Smith now, who's there at Ohio State, and he has the record for receptions in Ohio State history. Yes, he's been there all 4 years. But I love Egbuka. I would like to parlay him with someone else here in the first round. Maybe you go with like him and Jackson Dart, and you get a nice little minus 116 if you think both those guys go. But what do you think about some of these wide receivers towards the end of the first?
Yeah, Ibuka seems like the linchpin of the teams that are going to be interested in receiver later on in the first round, because I think we can probably safely assume that both Ted McMillan and Matthew Golden end up being top 20 selections. And it does feel like there is a bit of a tier drop between those two guys, and then you get to Ibuka or even Luther Burden as potential late first round, early second round guys. I worry whether, and I do like Ibuka and what he can do, but I'm just not completely sold on the ceiling. I think that he's like a little bit more of like a poor man's version of JSN if we want to do comparisons from the Ohio State room. So I could see him being there in the first, and like the minus 300 certainly, it adds some credence to that, but I hadn't really considered him too much to be like a first round lock necessarily, the way that the odds are kind of putting it right now.
So since I got these first round potential first round picks here in this odds market up on the screen at the moment, we'll end with this last thing I got to bring up just because I can't believe what I'm looking at. Jalen Milroe to be a first round pick. Like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? I saw a report earlier this week. Someone wrote out from some scout that they're considering Jalen Milroe to be the best, like the best. What I forget how they phrased it, but it was like basically the best uh, running quarterback ever potential with Milroe here. I mean, I know we got crazy and stupid with Milroe last season in college football. At like the end of September, we were saying he could potentially be like the number one pick. Uh, I don't know. I don't think Jalen Milroe's game is going to translate to the NFL as a quarterback, but yet I'm staring at a plus 165. That is not a crazy ticket there, or a crazy price rather, when it comes to value that you're getting with Milroe. So, what's your take on Milroe? Does he actually have the potential to sneak into the first round Thursday night?
This is where doing this for a while really ends up paying off, because it feels like the week of the draft there's always like that dark horse that gets some late steam, some late linkage to teams going in the first round that might be interested in a quarterback. But I think ultimately we're going to see another kind of rug pull here where I feel bad for Milroe if he's getting built up as a first rounder and he has to wait until like the middle of the second round on Friday to be selected. I think that that's about where he should go in the first place. But we saw it with Will Levis, we saw it with Malik Willis, where these guys in the betting odds markets kind of go crazy to reflect it. Where it's like, oh well, I mean, there was the morning of the 2023 NFL draft. I think Will Levis had better odds to go second to the Texans than CJ Stroud did. So just bear that in mind when it comes to these draft props and anything that where there's these big orders of magnitude shifts in the odds. So long story short, I'm not buying Jalen Milroe as a first round pick, and it also kind of goes with if Sanders' market is cooling, that kind of gives you the sense of where these teams are with this particular quarterback class. They're probably still not moving Milroe over a guy like Sanders, and if Sanders is falling, I think that has a downstream effect on where Milroe ends up.
So FanDuel has it posted draft position 38 and a half for Milroe. Juice to the over. I would take that over. I don't think we see him till, like you're saying, the middle of the night on Friday.
The I will say with the price being what it is, under 38 and a half, and then you realize the context of the early second round is going to be outside of the Titans, a bunch of teams that passed on quarterback. Maybe within those first five picks of the second round, someone like the Giants might be interested, or maybe even the Browns.
Fair enough. All right. I think we'll wrap there. Thanks for joining me, buddy. I mean, thanks, guys, for watching too. If you like the content, hit that subscribe button. It would mean a lot. John, thanks so much, man. Enjoy the draft as always, and hope to do this again soon.
Man, much appreciated. Thanks for having me on, Waddy, and enjoy the show this weekend.
All right. Very good. All right, guys. Thanks. I'm going to end this live stream now. Hopefully, it ends as it's supposed to, but end the stream and end. All right. I think we're good.
Awesome.
All right, man. Thanks.